Welcome to the Living Connected podcast. I'm your host, Mallory Meyer, a multi-six-figure entrepreneur, founder of White Wolf Reiki, and a former corporate HR professional turned polyvagal-informed leadership and neuro coach, Reiki master, educator, and international speaker. In this podcast, we explore the intricate connection between our nervous system and our performance, productivity, and well-being. I'm here to guide organizations, leaders, and founders in enhancing performance, fostering a psychologically safe workplace, and building teams with high retention that thrive. Let's future-proof your business, raise team morale, and prevent burnout. Join me weekly as we tap into discussions around regulating the nervous system, rewiring the mind, and enhancing wealth and success, with a splash of my love for energy healing and magic woven in as well. Here's to choosing to live more connected. I just want to extend my appreciation in advance for bearing with me through this episode today. As you can likely hear in my voice, I am very congested, coming out of the tailwind of just being sick and ultimately wanting to bring forward still this discussion, this conversation, because it is so prevalent, not only when I'm speaking with clients, but obviously too with peers. And what this is all about is not only being able to bring awareness in and how we go about reducing and repairing harm when we're working with individuals, because of course we are human and this is going to happen, but also really setting this intention of, for one, what does it mean to create a safe space while also understanding what this element looks like when we go about and we violate the expectancy, the social expectancy of an individual, and the behaviors that can arise, and equipping you with, at the very end of this episode, I'll share with you not only some insight when it comes to a very pragmatic tip that you can take forward, but also what you can start to implement yourself, whether again you are a coach, a leader, an executive leader working with individuals, even just a founder, and you are working with different various external stakeholders and clients, things that you can keep in mind. So I can't wait to tap into this. And again, thank you so much for bearing with me through this. So, first and foremost, I want to start off by talking about there really is no single definition of harm because it looks and feels different to every individual. Everyone's identities, trauma, past experiences, and even current experiences determine the meaning of harm for them. So, with that, we will inevitably cause harm at some point, like I mentioned in the introduction, because we are human. It's ensuring, though, as you are in a position of space holding, that you feel equipped, though, with the right inner resources and strategies to approach the nuance of leadership and this human essence. Now, of course, too, especially if you are in a position leading masterminds, groups, teams, and setting an intention to create a safe space for those, do you know how to go about repairing and or reducing harm? And I share this and I'm so compelled to share a lot more about this because I personally did have a violation of expectancy, which essentially, unfortunately, as well, completely disengaged me from that mastermind that I was in previously, just because of feeling undervalued as well as evaluated through that space. And this is really where we start to witness when we're holding space for groups, for team meetings, within masterminds. Of course, we have this natural innate desire for harmony, for connection, for safety, for innovation to be birthed as that foundation, but dealing with many multiple individuals as well as being that center point, that cannot necessarily always be the outcome. Just some examples of how, in which way harm can arise or re traumatization. This can be elicited through perhaps if you are, whether you coin yourself as a coach, whether you coin yourself as a leader, you may have essentially guaranteed safety in your work and in your space holding. It could also arise perhaps from spiritual bypassing, simply writing off lived or current experiences Which, to note, if you have been a client of mine, you know you go through a pretty comprehensive intake to work with me. So I have a great grounded foundational understanding of this, but that's essentially how it could arise. Also within toxic positivity and or even mindset only coaching, while also asking yourself, are you working outside of your scope of practice? And this is also where we can start to witness and gleam a light into, do we need to evaluate and consider partnerships with therapists? And once we do know an individual's current or lived experiences, do we feel adequate to bring in the appropriate individuals to meet that scope of practice as well to support the individual? So that's essentially just a few common and often ways that we can recognize that this could be elicited, while also when leaders fail to meet that expectation. And by expectation, I'm talking about someone's lived experience, creating a sense of safety for them. It can result in disengagement. This is from that violation of expectancy. So, whether your actions or words violate the group's sense of safety and individual sense of safety, some members may enter into a shutdown mode. So, when we connect back into the nervous system response, this is a survival response where they disconnect emotionally or become passive. And through this violation of social expectation, it can also trigger our innate sense, being that individual of danger, leading us into that fight or flight response and moving more inwards to that collapsed feeling. Now, behaviors of which, if you are facilitating that space, ways of which that you can pick this up if you don't have any context otherwise as to the essence, of course, when we're talking about an individual's humanity and lived experience, they might find that it's necessary to have a camera off. But let's say that you are holding space for others, their cameras have been on, and then 1 week, a behavior that can arise, and this is again just curiosity to bring into your awareness, is cameras are now off, that they do not want to be present and open and have that camera off. Maybe they start, especially this is more from a coaching lens than being in an executive leadership lens because employees would be at work, but maybe they're not attending as frequently the meetings. Maybe perhaps even just evaluating, looking at the space that you're holding. Is someone capitalizing the time more than others? And perhaps maybe there's an individual that's never quite contributing because they're so disengaged. Now, beyond everything that is unfolding in that circumstance, of what you might start to be acknowledging in real time when you are leading and holding space with others, is the biggest cue acknowledging here for you. Our nervous systems are scanning everything that's going on subconsciously or consciously, and we are making narratives. So, in this example of someone has their cameras off, this could be making a reflective evaluation from our scan and changing our physiology, thus influencing how we experience that moment and interact. So, of course, knowing your team dynamics and how to cultivate a space to honor their individuality too, such as maybe cameras off may just suffice, is fine. But if you do not have that foundational knowledge and you are witnessing this, how important it is to acknowledge that narrative and how the subtlety within our nervous system responding is shifting our physiology, shifting the narrative, and shifting what we are broadcasting to each individual. So, within that example, it was more of a disengaged, collapse individual that was also then shifting the narrative in your physiology. But I want to share also an example here of how potentially the individual could be more activated and in their fight zone where they are going to push back, they're going to get upset, they're going to disagree. And can you be in that discomfort? Can you just observe what is happening for you
And what I really want to emphasize and drive home here is when a client or when an employee is dysregulated in your space or experiences a re traumatization, repair is not done your way. It is not done by your process, and nor is it not done on your time. Yes, we can have protocols, we can have a high level process, yet that will change and evolve based on the individual. And it's so, so important for us to be able to meet people where they are at when we open up to their process, when we open up to give them the room, to give them the space, and to give them the option to maybe perhaps whether it's pushing back, whether it's speaking up, whether it is having a side conversation that is private, but it begins most importantly with the observation of what is unfolding and feeling that you can lean into that discomfort to explore it further. Just a quick reminder and pause to interrupt today's episode in the upcoming Leading with Ease masterclass that I am holding and facilitating on January 23rd. If you have yet to register, you will find the opportunity to do so within the show notes. And this is going to be so, so valuable. It's immersed with so much, not only very concrete application in your nervous system, but you will be walking away with some very clear tools and exercises to support you in amplifying your cognitive functions and very much being able to start that journey to a stronger, more resilient mental well being. So, I really hope to see you next week for our live masterclass. There will be a replay if you cannot join us live. But again, please be sure to register if you have yet to. So, having tapped into today what a violation of expectancy could essentially look like for you as a leader with employees, as a coach with your clients, as a founder with your stakeholders, also acknowledging how you can already start to witness and start to make some subtle shifts for repairing harm and also bringing forth this opportunity for you to see your nervous system and how the subtlety of it operates as well. But more so than anything, what we are getting at with polyvagal theory is through that subtle shift, what we talked about within your physiology, taking on that narrative of something's gone awry or there is harm that's been done, there is a threat that's arising. Now, how do we relate to that bodily response to help us realign that physiology to support our intentions? And so often, when it comes to facilitating group spaces, the intention is to create a safe space. So, like, there are very clear strategies. We gently talked about process, but also process on the timeline in the way that is best met for the individual, too. So, it's not always just ours to create a greater sense of harmony and actual repair while ensuring that we have the right resources to realign. So, one of these approaches that I wanted to share with you can look like you take that time and you acknowledge and you name and you check in with the individual separately and following which the harm could have been done. And that can simply look like asking for that conversation, but simply also, I've done this with client in sending them a message, sending them a voice message of I am something along the lines I'll just say is like, I'm noticing this and stating that, acknowledging that, naming that. Does this resonate with you? And reopening that conversation for myself as well. There is also, and this can be applied to any individual when you're working with someone, is actually receiving consent before providing suggestions and feedback. So, receiving consent would be, may I provide a suggestion here that could support you? May I provide you with some feedback before just again acting and getting that consent, getting that verbal cue from them? And then thirdly, here is really coming into a place for yourself of what happens when you get activated, when you are activated. Can you get clear on what is yours and what is theirs? Can you check in with your nervous system and have that compassion to sit with it and not get activated and take action from there, but let it process, let it be there? Do you have a designated professional or even personal support to share your experience with? This is what, especially with the coaching clients that I'm working with right now, at the level of which they are moving through such a different experience within their levels of not only wealth, but of the nuance and leadership that it can bring, leaning on me to have that share in their experiences. So I would love to hear, for one, we're going to close out this episode. I so appreciate you bearing with me again. I have no doubts that I'm going to be sounding like a whole new human for next week's episode, but are you equipped with the right inner resources and strategies to approach the nuance that is the byproduct of not only leadership, but truly acknowledging our humanness, while also have you had an experience? I would just love to hear. Of course, you can DM me to keep it private, but if you feel like there are others that need to hear of this, that need to start to make and bridge that awareness, bridge that gap to foster the experiences of each individual in the best way possible, feel free to share this. Feel free to leave a review here. I'm just so grateful to hear so far the responses to the episodes that have been coming forward and ways of which that you are just receiving more insight of living more connected, of course, for yourself. I'm also going to share in the show notes. I had the privilege to be a guest in some recent other individuals' podcast platforms and would love for you. They were both very different conversations, both, however, on leadership, on the nervous system. And I will have that there if you desire to tune into, to listen to their episodes, and just hear a little bit more about my experience as well. Thank you so much for being here. And until next week, I hope you stay regulated and have that opportunity to join us, of course, in the masterclass on January 23rd. Sending all my love and light.
Let me just take a moment to share something that has truly elevated my mornings and helped me start my day on a greater, calm, focused, even with a punch of veggies note. I've integrated Plant People gummies into my morning routine, and their products have become an essential part of my self care. What I really find sets Plant People apart is their commitment to quality and transparency. It's a natural and plant based approach to self care that aligns perfectly with my values. But the greatest part about it is whether it's been a tea, a gummy, or even their spreads, they don't compromise on taste. So, who doesn't like treating yourself to a moment of indulgence while nourishing your well being? And I do have something special for you, the listeners here. Plant People is offering an exclusive discount. You can use the code MALMEYER, and I should say it's mal.meyer at checkout to enjoy 15% off your order. You won't want to miss this opportunity, and you can find those full details in the link in the show notes below.